The Liberals are really concerned about losing the, there's an election on right now, there's a by-election on, and all assets activated, all of the big hitters from Chrystia Freeland. I don't know if Justin Trudeau's parachuted in there yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if he has. So everybody and his dog are touring that riding in order to secure Liberal re-election. And I don't know, it's not likely, because I'll show you some of the polls. The Liberals are slated to lose almost every single, well, a lot of their seats. The NDP are supposed to have more seats at this point in time, which is incredible. Heat wave in the UK. Yes, it's going to be a catastrophic 26 degrees Celsius. So 26, heat wave. You should see the graphics. I'll show them to you. And if you cover up treason or allow it to continue, aren't you as guilty as the people that you're enabling? Right? There's lots going on, and we'll get started. First, we have to start with treason, right? First, we have to talk about what's going on in our government and why Jagmeet Singh is continuing to prop up this treasonous government. Tamara Litch starts us off, and she says, never forget what they did to us. So many good Canadians felt broken. The same people responsible are now known to be wittingly colluding with hostile foreign agents against the best interests of Canada and her people. But we don't get to know who they are, and they're still going to work every day trying to pass or push through more harmful legislation. Yep. And again, if there's treason in the government, you can't just allow the government business to continue and say, we're really going to deal with it after the summer break. Because we've got to have a summer break, right? Even people who are committing treason need to take a breather by the lake. Bruce McGonigal is responding to Vasi Kapolis and Jagmeet Singh, and we're going to get to this exchange soon. CTV question period says, why will the NDP leader continue to support the Liberals despite its criticism over the Fed's handling of foreign interference? It's treason. Foreign interference is a stand-in for the term treason because the news media can't be critical of this government, honestly. Jagmeet Singh says, I'm worried about foreign interference, treason, in an election. I don't want to cause an election to address treason. So Vasi Kapolis says, I understand what you mean, not wanting to cause an election with the backdrop of treason as the reason. However, you're not actually doing anything. And again, we'll talk about that in a minute. But Bruce says, covering up a crime someone else is committing makes you an accessory to the crime. Jagmeet Singh signed a gag order which protects him in a court of law because he can refuse to testify on matters in the report, even if they link directly to the WEF, Chrystia Freeland, Jagmeet, or Justin Trudeau. Why did Jagmeet Singh try to pressure Pierre Poilievre to sign the same NSICOP gag order? Okay, and so this is Criminal Code of Canada 21.1. Everyone is a party to an offense who actually commits does or omits to do anything for the purpose of aiding any person to commit or abets any person committing the crime. Accessory after the fact. So accessory after the fact is to an offense is one who, knowing that a person has been party to the offense, receives, comforts, or assists that person for the purpose of enabling that person to escape. So if you know that there's treason and you allow them to, here, have a sandwich, and here, take my car keys, well, you're accessory after the fact. You're a criminal, right? And so it's very interesting what's going on with Jagmeet Singh, and allowing this criminality to continue would make him also a criminal, maybe an accessory after the fact, right? John Smith says, Liberal MPs covering up for treasonous Liberal MPs, shouldn't that be considered a crime as well? We will get back to the Jagmeet Singh thing. I just think it's down here. This is where I was intending to watch it. So I just wanted to make sure. Lion Advocacy is thinking about the same thing. He says, I'll have to think about this a bit more, but if a politician reads a report and decisively concludes that there are traitors in the government, but continues to prop up the government because it suits his political agenda, then said politician may become part of said traitor group. Right? Yes. Traitors in our midst? Yes, you're one of them, Jagmeet. Mark Patron is responding to CTV News, Singh more alarmed after reading the report, but won't break from Liberal NDP agreement. Singh is fine with traitors running the country as long as he can continue propping up the Trudeau regime, collect his pension, and push for more Marxist-style authoritarianism before they all get thrown out on their ass. There was somebody, and it wasn't me who said this, but basically they said, I will not accept Justin Trudeau simply being thrown out. He needs to be thrown in jail. He needs to be held accountable. There needs to be trials. And the judge needs to not be a ski buddy, right, that he went skiing with or was friends with, or an insider judge, et cetera, et cetera. Could we get Trump to appoint an American judge, maybe a military judge, somebody non-partial. He'll just look at the evidence. Dan Albus is responding to Trudeau. Brian Lilly says, watch this Trudeau clip carefully. We watched it yesterday. He's asked multiple times whether there are Liberal MPs named in the NSICOP report. He refuses to say. 3 questions, 3 dodges, and Dan says he brags about creating NSICOP, who gave him an all-party 5-alarm fire report that said there are parliamentarians working against Canada's interests. He should be thanking them, not dismissing their views. He is all redaction, no action on foreign interference. Yeah, that's obvious. Here is Vasi Kapoulis, and this exchange is worthwhile. The first 2 minutes is good because the first 2 minutes is good for different reasons than the last 2 minutes is good. We may watch all of it. I think there's points to be made in both sections for different reasons. So if it seems long, I apologize, but it's worthwhile. Here we go. The other conclusion you reached. See, and I listened to it in 2 times speed, so I can know that there's 2 interesting specific pieces, but we should listen to it together in 1 time speed. Okay, here we go.
The other conclusion you reached, which you talked about, was saying that your impression now is that the Prime Minister is essentially okay with a level of foreign interference occurring in this country. That's a pretty serious thing to say. At the same time, you have endorsed his government. You're keeping Mr. Trudeau in power as Prime Minister. Doesn't that make you complicit?
Not at all. And I want to make this point really clear. I'm worried about foreign interference in an election. I don't want to cause an election to address foreign interference. What I want to do is use my power in a minority government to get answers. I can be very clear. When I was critical of Justin Trudeau, I was equally critical of Pierre Poilievre. I can say with great confidence that neither one, if there was a majority government under Justin Trudeau or a majority government under Pierre Poilievre, neither of them would have allowed for a public inquiry. Both of them have shown behavior where they put the interests of their own party ahead of the country. And there are certain incidents that should absolutely call in anyone who cares about our country to put our country first. And that's why I was very critical of Pierre Poilievre for not even wanting to know what's in there when clearly there's allegations of foreign interference directly related to the Conservative leadership races, touching his party.
This is a pivot from treasonous Chinese interference directly to get 11 MPs elected in the Liberal government, and more probably. Pivot to the Conservative leadership race, and this is a pivot away from the fire that Jagmeet Singh is protecting, right, to a different fire. And they're both concerning. However, one is in the government active. Well, both are in the government actively right now. And who's pulling the strings to run the leadership races of both of our major federal parties, Conservative and Liberal, right? So that's, it's to a point, it's a valid question, but it's a pivot away from what Vasi's trying to talk about.
Party directly, and he doesn't want to know. And that Justin Trudeau did know.
Also, just the other part of this is Jagmeet Singh pushing Pierre Poilievre to sign this gag order is yet another layer of concern because it gags him. And Jagmeet Singh is trying to position himself. Like if you imagine a chess game, it's trying to force Poilievre to put himself into a position where he's pinned, where he can't talk about it, but he knows about the details, but he can't talk about it. And so it's interesting because Jagmeet Singh shouldn't be trying to censor the other political leaders, but he is. So that's an interesting thing to know.
No, and the example I gave was Mr. Dong, which is publicly available, and that's why I can use that example, is that with Mr. Dong, it was clear that he was briefed, given information about foreign interference from intelligence officers and intelligence officials, and accepted a certain level of interference because he didn't say that we're going to remove the candidacy of Mr. Dong. What I want to point out to Canadians as a leader, we vet candidates. If someone has done an egregious tweet or post, they are sometimes vetted out. That means they cannot run.
But this isn't just like a candidate with a bad
foreign
record.
Interference.
This is such a serious allegation. Like you've spent the past 2 days talking about how seriously you are taking it versus other leaders. But you have to see from the vantage point of Canadians how I get what you're saying. Forcing an election right now, maybe not the best avenue. But your agreement doesn't have to remain as...
That's the only solution. If you have treason, you release the names and you make the government fall. The government can't be kept in place to legislate there's treason. Like and Jagmeet Singh being concerned about further, influence, foreign interference, and further foreign influence. The only remedy is to bring down the government, because all the censorship that they're passing, that Jagmeet Singh is supporting, is going to undermine Canada's sovereignty, period. And I think it's interesting that Vasi is underlining how serious this allegation is, where Jagmeet Singh is trying to minimize it, right?
As a formality, just because you break out of that agreement and stop your clear endorsement of the government doesn't mean that you have to cause an election. You can still vote with them on certain matters of confidence.
No, that's completely ridiculous. You can't vote confidence on the treasonous party. You can't say that party is engaging in treason and we are ending our confidence and supply deal, and then vote confidence in the government. Like, seriously, Vasi? There was something else. Hold on, I'm going to watch the rest of it, because we may have already touched on it, and if so, we're ahead. As soon as I pushed play, she got into it. So she's pushing on him, saying it's your responsibility to actually do something about this, and you're not going to do anything about it. So the fact that she's giving him the option to, and stupidly, because it's not really an option, to end the confidence and supply deal but not actually drop the government, just because she says it doesn't make it true. It's not true. You can't do that. He couldn't do that, right? He couldn't say we're ending our confidence and supply deal and we're going to vote confident in this next thing because, we're getting things I want from this treasonous government. Now you're treason. You're participating in treason too, right? So that's how this works. But currently, still participating in treason.
But you appear unwilling to do anything to change that agreement, even when you accuse the Prime Minister, whom you're keeping in power, of being okay with a level of foreign interference in our own country's political system.
Well, I think that's factual. The facts bear out the fact that he's accepting a certain level of foreign interference. When we vet candidates out as leaders based on an egregious post on social media, we should be able to vet out candidates when there is serious allegations of foreign interference. But I want to be clear.
Treason.
We have used our power. We have been very critical of this government and forced them to do things they would not have otherwise done. I made the point that a majority Conservative government under Pierre Poilievre or a majority Liberal government under Justin Trudeau, neither of them would have moved ahead with public inquiry, because we can see in their actions their unwillingness to take this seriously. But we forced a public inquiry to happen.
But they're doing nothing right now. Both of them are doing nothing right now. The government is doing nothing on foreign agents.
Let me be very clear. We are the first ones to call for a public inquiry. The government said no. And then they said maybe we'll do a special rapporteur. They had the special rapporteur. We had the special rapporteur step down as a result of our opposition to the motion. We forced the government to move forward on a public inquiry. And then not only did we force the public inquiry, we forced the public inquiry to include India after clear information and intelligence related to India's involvement of the killing of a Canadian on Canadian soil. We have used our power in a minority government to
I thought the influence in India was in the leadership race.
To purposely push for more transparency and clarity, which would have not been there if we had a majority.
The special rapporteur was a complete bust. The investigation didn't reveal anything, and it was handled so badly that now we're dealing with CSIS leaks and other things that are pointing to treason in our government. And the NDP says, that special rapporteur and that inquiry we got, we fought hard for that. It wasted a year. We should have dropped the government last year. It should have brought down the government last year. There's absolutely no excuse. Jagmeet Singh, the only reason he is not dropping the government is because he's going to lose. And that's not me saying that. That's Vasi Kapoulas. Here that is. Here she is.
You're not willing to take the step of voting against them or forcing an election because you'd lose. And you'd lose big in the next election. I looked at 3 separate polls. Angus Reid had you at 19%, Abacus at 17%, Nanos at 16%. Your fundraising is $6.8 million compared to $35 million for the Conservatives, $15.6 to the Liberals. So I read there is no chance of you being responsible for an election happening before the date that's set out.
Ultimately, we see that the Prime Minister and the Liberal government will call the election when they want.
You're not willing to...
So, I mean, at least Vasi Kapoulas is being honest with Jagmeet Singh, right? Michael Barrett says Trudeau is going on a 3-month vacation. Conservatives are calling for summer hearings to root out the corruption after 9 years of Trudeau. Will the worker bee NDP get to work, or will they cover up for Trudeau and join him on a 3-month vacation? Yeah, if the Conservatives are able to force the House of Commons to work through the summer, I will be shocked. I'd be interesting because that's good for my show. I mean, I do my show through the summer anyway, because there's a lot of stuff that happens in Canadian politics when people aren't paying attention, right? Or when they think people aren't paying attention, but I'm always paying attention. And so it'll thicken up the show. Although honestly, there's enough going on anyway. I can make a meal of pretty much anything. So there's always stuff going on, but if they have to work through the summer, it will be interesting to see, because the work through the summer for the Conservatives is to find an angle to drop the government, and the NDP already have what they want in that they can just walk away. They can just say, no, we're gonna follow the schedule of the treasonous Liberals. So that's what they're gonna do. And so, because doing it that way makes it easier for them to get what they want, which is to buy time for their programs to continue to destroy our country, flood people in. Our sovereignty gets destroyed. Our ability to vote these people out gets diluted because of all the people. And, that's all they want. So the harder they work to get to the bottom of this, the less their ideology wins. So they're just going to walk away. They're not going to work through summer. That's a spoiler. CTV News is reporting Foreign Affairs Minister insists there are no traitors in Liberal caucus. Somebody made this comparison, and I thought that it was quite apropos. Oh, it was Eva Chipik. So yesterday I showed you that the Foreign Affairs Minister was told on Power and Politics on Sunday morning, after CBC News had reported on it, that the Canadian Navy and the Russians were sharing a dock in Havana, in Cuba. And she had no idea. She says, well, I have to investigate that. Well, I've got the footage, Minister. Like, here, you don't know, but here's the tape, right, from earlier today. And apparently they're giving tours to tourists. I'm sure it's just Cuban tourists, and definitely no Russians are checking out the Canadian ship. I don't know. Looked like a fishing tree. What's this called? The deadliest catch vessels looked bigger than the ship Canada sent. Regardless, Eva says Mel Joly knows nothing about the warship in Havana, but definitely knows there are no traitors in the Liberal caucus. How can we take these people seriously, right? Foreign Affairs Minister insists there are no traitors in the Liberal caucus. Bull poop. This is just basically reiterating all of that. They didn't know, and no, there probably isn't traitors, and don't worry about it, except the report definitely says there are traitors. We're supposed to believe them, even though they're incompetent, and purposely so. They're not incompetent like they don't know they're incompetent, right? They're incompetent on purpose. CTV Question Period is talking to Mel Joly, and they say, how is Mel Joly responding to criticism that the federal government is slow to respond to foreign interference and not taking the issue seriously enough? Joly points to the ongoing public inquiry in Bill C-70, saying, what I can tell you is we've been very forward-leaning. Have we done enough? No. So she spins a story. Vasikopoulos, I think, does a good job at laying out the failures of this government. And Joly spins a story of being responsive and actually responding. And she says, that's my story and I'm sticking to it, which is not a good way to end your argument, because it seems like you're making crap up. So, here we go.
The diplomat that you kicked out frequently to show Canadians that your government is taking this very seriously. But the NSICOP report really undermines that conclusion by pointing out in great detail the degree to which your department was in receipt of intelligence from CSIS about him for years, including since when you became Foreign Affairs Minister, and did not take any action. So much so until the day that the Globe and Mail reported on Michael Chong being targeted, GAC reached out to CSIS for intelligence, and the intelligence that was provided was, quote unquote, according to NSICOP, already released. How can Canadians trust that your government is actually taking this seriously when NSICOP clearly points out on multiple occasions, including that occasion, that you did not?
I met NSICOP, and I had many conversations with the members of NSICOP on this issue. And to your very question of me being aware, I was made aware at the same time as this became public through the media. And it was back in the spring of 2023. So clearly there was an issue within how the government and the public service was organizing briefings for intelligence. And from the moment I got the information, I acted. Now,
so you never saw anything about him prior to that, because your department was clearly in receipt of that intelligence.
But I was clear, and that's my story, and I stick to it.
I didn't hear anything before the media said anything about it, even though my department says they were in receipt of the reports. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Next question. Government. Are they treasonous? I'll leave that up to you to decide. Bill says she's cartel. There is no telling the truth, right? And this is a response to how is Melanie Joly responding to criticism that the federal government is slow to respond. 26% of contracts fail audits. So auditors have uncovered routine irregularities in the hiring of consultants in Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly's department. The review followed a public outcry over billions spent on consultants government-wide, said an internal audit report. In the last 5 years, the department signed more than 8,000 consulting service contracts totaling $567 million. So it all seems like it's a Rive scam, and we're all being taken for a ride. Our tax dollars are being used and being kind of laundered, but it seems like the laundering is almost leverage. Like it's being leveraged, not just laundered, but leveraged. Like we're using this as a down payment on further laundering in the future. Don't worry, they're good for it. You know what I'm saying? It seems like they're doing something more than just stealing our money, and I'm not exactly sure what, but there's something else to it. It's like the stock market where they're like, just buy stocks. And you're like, oh, okay, I'll buy some stocks. And then you find out there's a lot more, like shorting stocks, and like there's all sorts of other things you can do in the stock market too, right? And it's not just the one thing you can do. And that's what I feel like we're being bamboozled. It's not just one way to commit treason. They've figured out dozens of ways to skin that cat. Eddie says, here's an idea. I like the idea of reform. I like the idea of government reform. I like the idea of which ways can we actually have a government that is for the people, by the people, to paraphrase our southern neighbor, something that is accountable to the citizens that they're supposed to be governing. A government that understands that it is not the government that bestows rights upon the people. The government respects the rights that the people have independent of the government, right? Bestowed upon them because they are people, right? And that's it. And because those free speech, et cetera, it's not up to permission. It's not up to parental permission or state permission. It is a gift granted by God, and there's nothing anybody can do about it, right? I have freedom of thought. Should have freedom of association. I have freedom of speech because I can say whatever I think, even if it's dumb. Like, hey, isn't that guy not wearing any clothes? Hey, isn't that treasonous, Jagmeet Singh, right? But they want to strip all that away and replace it with state rights. So I'm for reform, and I don't know how to get it to the point where it seems like government is responsive to the majority of people. I think we had it at one point, but it's been diluted to the point of uselessness at this point. Anyway, Eddie comes up with his idea of reform, and he says, here's an idea. Let's propose that federal MPs have term limits, no lifelong pensions, just a severance package, recall legislation, reform or abolish the Senate, also a yearly forensic audit of every MP. Canadians get a direct input by having referendums on major policy issues. See, I think we should shut it down. I think the government's bloated beyond belief. Hundreds of, like 338 MPs, all these ministers, and we've got a situation where they're not running anything. Like they're running ministries for women and girls. And then you say, what are you supposed to do? And they say, or the minister of middle class. And they say, what is the middle class? And they go, they look like a deer in headlights because they know they don't understand their job because their job is bullshit. So cut it back. Like have 9 MPs, have 9 people who are working on the roads, who are working on like the things that only government can do, foreign trade, how to fix national infrastructure, build pipelines, that kind of stuff, right? Have a very small group of people, elect them, sure, and have like an army of people to do what they need to do, but make sure that those people, the bureaucrats underneath them, don't have power, because like the bureaucrats are running things. It's the bureaucrats themselves are the shadow government, because they think they know better, et cetera, than the American people, and certainly better than the representatives that the American people elect, certainly better than Trump anyway, right? And so we're doing it wrong, and because we don't care, and we don't care because it's complex, and we can't care because if you care about one thing, you can't care about anything else, right? If you know about one thing, and if you know about one thing and want to talk about it a lot, nobody wants to listen to you. Trust me, I've been to parties where I'm like, so you want to talk about Canadian politics? And they don't. So I don't go to many parties anymore. No, I mean, sometimes you do, right? Sometimes you get people who are interested, and then once you get talking, people talk, but then it can get fraught. and it's difficult, and it's one of those things where if the government was working for us, I don't know that it would be difficult. I remember being able to talk politics at parties years ago, no problems at all. And people would explain to me right and left and like why some people were right wing and why some people were left wing. The joke was, if you're not a liberal, when you're under 40, you don't have a heart. And if you're not a conservative past 40, you don't have a brain. And I was like, well, I seem to have a heart and now I seem to have a brain. So it's very interesting how stuff like that holds true, right? But that all was discussed very openly when I was a kid. British politics, my nan and I, the last really, really good conversation we had was about Scottish separatism. I was in the UK before, just before the Scottish separatism fight was settled. And she was, making her case. And I was like, well, I said, ultimately it won't happen. You know that, right? And I think she was pro-separatist. But anyway, regardless of all of that, politics was something that I grew up with and talking about really in a really robust way. And we could debate something, hold an idea out here and talk about it and not get upset with each other because we were just talking about the idea, right? If you thought the idea was stupid and I thought the idea was great, you weren't passing judgment on me. You were just saying the idea is stupid, which, hey, that's fine. This is an interesting idea to talk about. Is it a stupid idea? Cool. Toss it out. And if somebody can convince me, great. But it's not like that anymore, right? And that's a shame. Okay, let's talk about water. I learned, maybe it was Kevin who emailed me about the water. I think I said Kevin about the water. So I got an email explaining about the water, and I'll get there in just a minute. But I want to prep with some North Dakota, Idaho stuff. Wall Street Ape says the devastating effects of the Idaho farmland water shutoff. This guy's saying that he's talked to the governor, and the governor says that he can't do anything. But Contrarian Owl, take it with a grain of salt, says, I'm not buying this. The governors have considerable emergency powers. Idaho Statute 46601 grants Governor Brad Little emergency authority during proclaimed extreme emergencies such as economic devastation. This allows him to temporarily override water right laws to divert water as needed to address the emergency situation, route water to farms, and mitigate disastrous economic impacts of pervasive farm failures. So he can do something about it, but he's not going to. And that's what you need to hear out of this clip. So here's people discussing what's going on in Idaho.
Okay. There's more water than they know what to do with. In this kind of a year, they're deciding that they're going to close down 500,000 acres because of the new formula that have been introduced on the prerogative, I guess, of the Department of Water Resources. None of it makes any sense.
So they would say they're following through with this agreement that they had put in place a few years ago, and the farmers should have known?
I've talked to the governor, and the governor's position is he can't do anything about this because it's mentioned in the Constitution and the Supreme Court has weighed in. But honestly, when I talk to the attorneys, they're saying that's not a truthful version of what the facts are. The governor's office has a whole lot of prerogative. The Department of Water Resources has the prerogative on how to interpret these laws. By the way, the law does give priority to the folks that have senior water rights. So that's part's all true. But the governor, I'm going to plead that the governor exercise leadership here and that the legislature exercise some leadership and build some framework. What we need to have them do is build some framework around these agreements and around the laws so that we don't lose all of our agriculture in this area. And that appears to be the plan.
So they're planning to destroy the agriculture. Here's a gentleman saying the only way to solve this problem is to get a group of people and go up there and open up the taps and take your water and guard it and make sure that those MFers can't turn it off. Here you go.
I've got a question here. I'd like some of you folks to answer it. It's about Idaho. Over there in Idaho, the so-called authorities are threatening to shut the water off the potato growers and the grain growers and the people. Hey, the way I understand it, that's your water right, farmers, not theirs. They're stepping in there acting like they're in charge. Go get your group up together and go open those valves up and guard them. They haven't got enough people over there to fight you. Go get your water. Turn it on, keep guards on all the head gates, and take your water. That's your water. If you don't take it, it becomes theirs. That's the way most of water law is written. If you don't physically go ahead and take it, it becomes the person holding it. Maybe I'm wrong. This is a question, like I say. Give me some answers. But that's how you get your crop in the warehouse, okay?
There you go. So here is one more bit of color on the Calgary situation. So these are called hydrocons, I guess, and this is the kind of water pipe that is in, I think it's called a hydrocon. Hyperscon. So that's the name of these kind of pressurized pipes, okay? And that's what they look like. This is what they look like here. And so the way they work, I've been informed, is there's like a slinky. So the slinky gives the strength. And if there's a break, that compromises the whole bit of that pipe, right? Like the whole thing is strength has been compromised. So fixing it is difficult. And you can't bore in, you can't tap off the side. You have to run a parallel line side by side, okay? You can't just tap off. It just doesn't work like that. And so somebody, Kevin, put in a big email, so I appreciate your time, man, to let me know how this works. And he says, like, yeah, there's legitimate reasons for these to be, like, for this repair to be taking as long as it's taking, and it might even take longer. And I thought, man, that's crazy. So after I found out what the name of these things were, I looked to see if there was any kind of, what's the history of these things catastrophically breaking, because these things are hard to fix, right? And it doesn't seem like this. It doesn't seem like 2024 is the first time that something like this has happened. And I found out, gosh, no, it's not. So the best laid plans, not a pipe dream. This is from 2020. And it says, earlier this year, the EOCP published an article on the catastrophic failure of a manhole in Squamish. This time, what we're looking at went wrong in Nanaimo. In the 1981s, a major water main was installed in Nanaimo using high-pressure concrete pipe, that's Hyperscon, that was expected to have a lifespan of approximately 80 years. Yet it failed prematurely, and it failed catastrophically. When the Hyperscon pipe failed on a Friday evening, 3rd of April 2020, 22 million liters of water were lost. This resulted in 3 reservoirs being completely drained and leaving a hospital as well as thousands of people without water. It took a few hours to isolate the main, but a temporary repair was completed, and the hospital and residents had water service restored by early Sunday morning. Friday evening, Sunday morning. So you do an emergency repair. I feel like there's an emergency repair that could be done here, but I understand I'm not a water pipe guy. I'm not a pressurized pipe guy. I'm not even a plumbing guy. So I understand that there are things that are outside of my understanding with regards to all of this. But when you're talking a lot of people and water mains and priority, everything else gets flushed when something like this happens. And this happened here. And everything else got put on hold, and they got it working again fast. Now, most people have water, they're just under water restrictions. So is that the same thing? Not sure. Let's look at what they did further to fix this problem. There was a significant amount of water on Bowen Road. However, it could have been worse, blah, 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 blah. A systemic review of the pipe revealed other signs of future leaks and structural failures, and the consequences of additional failures would be severe. To manage the risk, several measures were taken. So once they fixed the pipe with the emergency fix, then they investigated the pipe further and found that there were deficiencies and they needed to fix them. Okay, and so an emergency water supply shutdown procedure for the Hyperscon pipe section was implemented. In the 2021 to 2025 capital plan was reprioritized, and the Midtown Water Supply Project was introduced. Other major water supply capital projects were deferred in an effort to make way for the Midtown Water Supply Project and balance the water supply budget with the city's financial plan. The initial upgrades to replace the Hyperscon pipe were estimated to cost $23.5 million. However, due to a volatile construction market and the addition of a secondary supply for redundancy, the final cost is expected to be closer to $55 million. After a thorough water supply routing study through the middle of the city, it was determined that the best option would be to parallel the Nanaimo Parkway and avoid other corridors with congested underground utilities and major infrastructure. It was also found that the water supply through the middle of the city had little redundancy and was at risk in other areas crossing the Nanaimo Parkway, and Buttertubs Marsh. From this review, it was determined that a secondary water supply main would be required for future growth and provide future capacity and resiliency into the water supply system in the Midtown region. The Midtown Water Supply Project was constructed with 2 larger diameter water pipes to replace the aging and undersized current infrastructure that transmits potable drinking water to the central and northern areas of the city. This project will enhance the existing water supply network, build resiliency within the core of the city, and provide a dedicated water supply main to the Nanaimo Regional General Hospital. Dedicated line. So one of the things that I wanted to mention, they don't replace the pipe with hyperscon. They replace it with something else. 3 different things, actually. Depending on the location of the water supply main, 3 types of material are being used. A Kubota ductile iron pipe, also known as a hazard pipe, is being used in marsh areas with unfavorable soils. High-density polyethylene pipe, HDPE, solid wall, pressure pipe in 2 wall thickness, DR11 and DR13. What is unique about this pipe is that 2 sections are heated to 230 Celsius for 45 minutes. They're held together for approximately 25 minutes, and the 2 sections are then fused together. The heating and fusing machine is on tracks, can be moved along as needed, and can even be used within a trench. HDPE pipe was chosen for its cost effectiveness, delivery, and seismic stability. So when are we starting with the HDPE pipe to put in some options to get around this one? Calgary? 3 conventional welded steel pipe and 4 other features such as an urban trail network. Nice, right? Bike lanes? Anybody say bike lanes? Forget about it. But it's possible to fix something like this while planning for the future and not disrupting everybody and having water restrictions for years on end. It's possible. That's all I'm saying. I'm saying that assessing the pipe while it's broken and in a catastrophic way or in a catastrophic situation is probably not the best idea. Like, fix it and then assess it and then do the things that you need to do to fix it long term, right? Like, put the Band-Aid on and then let's start actually, stop the bleeding and then let's get ready for surgery, right? I don't know. Maybe I'm incorrect about this whole thing, but I really feel like these people and the people in charge in Calgary, even up to Danielle Smith at this point in time, how are those Coots guys still in jail? I'd have my attorney general in there every single day. What's going on? Why aren't they free? Why aren't they free? You get in there. Why aren't they free? Because everything surrounding it is bunk, and they damn well know it. So I think they're all playing games, and I don't know why, but they are, right? I want to get. Hello everyone, thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to canadapoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful